Olivia Jensen, 29, never imagined her own parents would give her an ultimatum that would shatter her world. Pay up or leave this family, your choice. The words still echoed in her mind as she stood outside her childhood home, suitcase in hand, rain soaking through her clothes. What they didn't know was that she had discovered their secret one that would bring their entire family facade crashing down around them. Hey everyone! Before I dive deeper into my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. This family revenge drama gets pretty intense, so if you enjoy stories about justice being served, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, what happened next in my family will shock you, especially when karma finally caught up with everyone involved. The Jensen family had always been picture perfect. At least, that's what everyone in our suburban Connecticut neighborhood thought. Mom was a respected pediatrician. Dad ran a successful accounting firm. My older brother Andrew was a corporate lawyer, and I was the youngest, the artistic one who'd become a moderately successful interior designer. From the outside, we were the American dream, summer vacations in Cape Cod Christmas cards, with matching sweaters and smiles that never seemed to fade. But perfection always has cracks if you look closely enough. The first sign came 3 weeks ago when I was helping my parents prepare for their 30th anniversary party. They'd asked me to redesign their master bedroom as a surprise for each other, ironic considering what I would discover. While measuring for new curtains, I accidentally knocked over my father's locked desk drawer. The key had been left in it, unusual for my meticulous father who guarded his privacy fiercely. What spilled out made my blood run cold. Documents showing a trust fund in my name with over $450,000 money from my maternal grandmother who had died when I was just 2 years old. According to her will, the money was supposed to be given to me when I turned 25. I was now 29 and had never seen a penny of it. Confused and shaking, I dug deeper and found bank statements showing regular withdrawals over the years. My parents had been systematically draining my inheritance for their own use. The designer kitchen remodel 3 years ago, my money, Andrew's down payment on his luxury condo. My money, the vacation home in Vermont they'd purchased last summer, all funded with what was rightfully mine. For days, I said nothing, secretly photocopying documents and trying to process this betrayal. All those years, they'd criticized my career choices, insisted I was financially irresponsible, made me feel guilty for not contributing more to family expenses, while they were literally stealing from me. The final straw came when I overheard them discussing using the last of Olivia's fund for a yacht they'd been eyeing. That night at dinner, I finally confronted them. "I know about Grandma's trust fund," I said quietly as Mom served her famous pot roast. The silence was deafening. Dad's fork clattered against his plate. Mom froze mid-motion. Andrew looked confused, or pretended to be. "What are you talking about?" Dad attempted, his voice unnaturally high. I placed the photocopied documents on the table. $450,000. My inheritance. The money you've been spending on yourselves for years, while making me feel like I was the financial burden. What followed was not denial, but justification. They'd invested the money for the family's benefit. They deserved it for raising me. I was being ungrateful for questioning their decisions. "We gave you everything, Mom," hissed her perfect facade, cracking. "Do you know how many sacrifices we made for you? Sacrifices paid for with my own money?" I countered, my voice surprisingly steady, despite my racing heart. Dad slammed his fist on the table. "We're your parents. We decide what's best for this family's finances. I want what's left of my inheritance," I said firmly. "All of it. Now." The laughter that followed from both my parents chilled me to the bone. There was nothing left, they admitted. Not a penny remained of my grandmother's gift. "Pay us back for raising you or leave this family. Your choice," Dad finally announced, crossing his arms like he was closing a business deal, gone sour. Andrew, who had remained silent, finally spoke. "Come on, sis, they're our parents. They did what they thought was best. Let it go." That's when I realized he knew. He had always known. My perfect, successful brother had benefited from my stolen inheritance and had helped cover it up. Standing there in my childhood home, surrounded by luxury items purchased with my money, I made my choice. I would leave, but not before ensuring justice would be served in ways they could never imagine. That night, as I packed my belongings, my hands still trembling with rage, I knew I needed more than just emotional closure. I needed a plan. My parents had taken everything from me financially, but they had forgotten one crucial thing. As an interior designer, I had access to their most private spaces, their most guarded secrets, and more importantly, I knew every hiding place in their meticulously maintained home. Over the years, I had redesigned every room in that house, including my father's home office, where he kept files he thought were secure. During those redesigns, I had noticed strange financial documents, unusual phone calls, and hushed conversations that never quite made sense until now. My father's accounting firm catered to wealthy clients in our affluent community. He had built his reputation on discretion and results, promising to maximize returns and minimize tax burdens through what he called creative accounting strategies. My mother's pediatric practice served the same wealthy clientele, operating on a cash-preferred basis for certain special services that were never clearly defined. I had always dismissed these oddities as normal business practices. Now I wondered if there was something more sinister beneath the surface. With newfound suspicion, I spent my last night in that house not sleeping but searching. I carefully went through filing cabinets, examined hidden compartments in furniture. I had helped select and accessed computer files using passwords I had seen my father type countless times when he thought no one was watching. What I found confirmed my suspicions and gave me the leverage I needed. My father had been running a sophisticated tax evasion scheme for at least a dozen wealthy clients, hiding millions in offshore accounts. My mother's practice had been billing insurance companies for procedures never performed while prescribing medication through suspicious channels. They weren't just thieves who had stolen from their daughter. They were criminals whose perfect family image served as the ideal cover for their operations. More disturbing was evidence that Andrew wasn't just aware, he was actively involved, using his position at his law firm to provide legal cover for some of these activities. By dawn, I had collected and digitized enough evidence to destroy them all, but I didn't want simple destruction. I wanted justice, and more importantly, I wanted my life back, the life that had been stolen from me along with my inheritance. My plan took shape with surprising clarity. First, I would disappear and establish myself somewhere new, somewhere they couldn't reach me. Second, I would connect with the one person who might help me navigate the legal complexities of what I had discovered my grandmother's former attorney, Richard Lowell. He had been pushed out of my parents' lives immediately after my grandmother's death. Now I understood why. Third, I would build a case meticulously, ensuring that when I finally struck, there would be no escape for any of them. Most critically, I needed financial stability. With only $3, 200 inches, my personal savings, and no inheritance left to claim, I had to be strategic. I reached out to my best friend Megan, who lived in Portland, Oregon, as far from Connecticut as I could reasonably go without leaving the country. I need a place to stay for a while. I told her over the phone, my voice low though. I was already blocks away from my parents' house. I can't explain everything now, but my family isn't what I thought they were. My spare bedroom is yours for as long as you need, she replied without hesitation. When are you coming? Tomorrow, I said, already booking a one-way flight using the last of my available credit. And Megan, no one can know I'm there, especially not my family. The next call was to my assistant, Tara. I need to take an emergency leave of absence, I explained. Family crisis. I'm not sure when I'll be back. Is everything okay? She asked, concerned. No, I answered honestly. But it will be. The final piece fell into place when I called Richard Lowell's office. His secretary initially tried to block me, but when I mentioned my grandmother's name and the trust fund that had been established for me, she put me through immediately. "Olivia Jensen," he said, his voice carrying the weight of decades. "I've been wondering when you might call. You knew I stated not a question." I suspected he corrected. "Your parents removed me as the executor of your grandmother's estate very quickly after her passing. There wasn't much I could legally do. Would you be willing to help me now?" There was a pause then. "My office in Portland, next Tuesday, 10 a.m. Bring whatever evidence you have." As I boarded the plane to Portland the next morning, I felt a strange sense of calm. My parents thought they had won, that I would either crawl back, begging for forgiveness, or disappear in shame. They had no idea that their perfect daughter was about to become their worst nightmare. Portland embraced me with its characteristic drizzle as I stepped off the plane. The gray skies matched my mood, but there was something liberating about being 3,000 miles away from the family that had betrayed me. Megan was waiting at the arrivals gate, her familiar face, a lighthouse in the storm my life had become. "You look like hell," she said, pulling me into a tight hug. "Feel like it too," I admitted, the exhaustion of the past few days finally catching up with me. Megan, with her brightly colored hair and sleeve of tattoos, had always been my opposite. Where my family valued conformity and appearances, Megan embraced authenticity and self-expression. We had met in college and remained close, despite my parents' thinly veiled disapproval of her alternative lifestyle. Her apartment was small, but welcoming, a converted industrial loft downtown with exposed brick walls and large windows overlooking the city. The spare bedroom was barely more than a glorified closet, but it felt safer than any room in my parents' mansion ever had. "So," she said, setting a cup of tea in front of me at her kitchen island, "want to tell me what's really going on?" I told her everything: the discovery of the trust fund, my parents' theft, their ultimatum, and the evidence of their broader criminal activities. Her eyes widened with each revelation. "Jesus, Liv," she whispered when I finished. "Your family makes The Sopranos look functional." Despite everything, I laughed for the first time in days. "And now I need to disappear while I figure out my next move." Megan's expression shifted to one of determination. "Well, you came to the right place. Portland is full of people reinventing themselves." Over the next few days, Megan introduced me to her network of friends, creative professionals, who operated in spaces outside traditional employment. There was Elliot, a cybersecurity expert who worked remotely and had strong opinions about digital privacy. Vanessa, who ran an underground supper club out of her apartment and paid no taxes on the income. And Dakota, a former corporate attorney who now provided legal advice to artists and small business owners. If you're serious about staying under the radar while you build your case, Dakota advised over drinks at a speakeasy-style bar tucked behind a bookstore, you need to change everything. How you make money, how you communicate, how you present yourself. "I'm an interior designer," I said. "That's all I know how to do." "So design," Vanessa suggested. "Just do it differently. Your family expects Olivia Jensen, Connecticut WASP princess, to design luxury homes for wealthy clients. Be someone else." The idea took root, and by the end of the week, Liv Carter was born, a designer specializing in sustainable renovations for Portland's booming eco-conscious market. Elliot helped create a digital identity that would be difficult to trace back to Olivia Jensen, including a new email address, social media accounts with carefully curated backdating, and a simple website showcasing projects that were actually mine but presented differently. "What about clients?" I asked. "I can't exactly put my portfolio online if I'm hiding." "Word of mouth," Dakota said. "I have clients who need design work, but are, let's say, privacy conscious. They don't ask too many questions if you don't." My meeting with Richard Lowell confirmed what I had suspected: legally reclaiming my inheritance would be difficult without revealing what I knew about my parents' activities. The statute of limitations on some of what you found is still active, he explained, reviewing the evidence I'd brought. This isn't just tax evasion, there's money laundering, insurance fraud, possibly even medical malpractice. But pursuing this means exposing everything. And my brother's involvement complicates things, I added. Richard's expression was grim. Andrew appears to be deeply entangled. Any action against your parents will likely implicate him as well. I need time, I said finally. Time to build a case that can't be dismissed. Time to establish myself independently so I'm not financially ruined when this all comes out. Time is the one thing they don't expect you to have, Richard noted. They think you're desperate, that you'll either come crawling back or self-destruct. Use that assumption. He agreed to discreetly contact some of his former colleagues at the IRS and FBI, testing the waters without revealing my involvement yet. Meanwhile, I would establish Liv Carter as a legitimate business and gather more concrete evidence. As I walked back to Megan's apartment that evening, rain soaking through my newly purchased second-hand coat, part of my Liv aesthetic, I felt the first stirrings of hope. My parents had raised me to believe that appearances were everything, that our family name was our greatest asset. Now I would use those lessons against them, crafting a new appearance, a new name, while I dismantled everything they had built on lies. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Package arrived. Secure. Call when ready. Elliot had come through. The additional financial records I'd requested from my parents' cloud storage had been successfully extracted. The digital breadcrumbs that would eventually lead to their downfall were now safely in my possession. For the first time since discovering the truth about my family, I smiled genuinely. They had taught me well, perhaps too well, how to craft the perfect facade. Now I would show them just how thoroughly I had learned that lesson. 6 months passed faster than I could have imagined. Liv Carter had established herself as Portland's go-to designer for eco-conscious renovations, with a waiting list of clients drawn to my signature style of repurposed materials and sustainable solutions. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd finally found professional fulfillment by becoming someone else. My one-bedroom apartment in the artsy Alberta district was a far cry from my parents' Connecticut mansion, but it felt more like home than anywhere I'd lived before. Second-hand furniture, I'd lovingly restored, plants thriving in every corner, and walls adorned with local artists' work. This space was authentically mine, in a way nothing in my previous life had been. But beneath this peaceful surface, I was orchestrating a complex operation against my family. Each night after completing designs for my Portland clients, I would transform into a digital sleuth, meticulously tracking my parents' continuing financial crimes. With Elliot's help, I maintained access to their private accounts, watching as they continued to siphon money through their elaborate schemes. Richard Lowell had made careful inroads with federal investigators, establishing connections without revealing my identity. They're interested, he confirmed during one of our monthly meetings. The patterns you've identified match other cases they're building. When you're ready to come forward, they'll listen. The most surprising development came from an unexpected source, my brother's wife, Sophia. She had reached out through a carefully encrypted channel Elliot had established after I noticed unusual activity in Andrew's personal accounts, large transfers to a hidden account in Sophia's name. He's planning to leave me, her message read. I found divorce papers. He's hiding assets, and I think he's involved in whatever your parents are doing. I want out, and I want protection. Sophia had always been the perfect corporate wife, beautiful, polite, and seemingly content to exist in Andrew's shadow. I had never considered her a potential ally until now. Our first meeting was arranged with extreme caution, a private room at a restaurant in Seattle neutral territory where neither of us was likely to be recognized. Sophia arrived in sunglasses and a headscarf, looking nothing like the polished society wife I remembered. "They don't know I'm here," she said immediately, sliding into the booth across from me. "Andrew thinks I'm at a spa retreat in Arizona. How did you find me?" I asked, still suspicious despite our digital correspondence. "I hired a private investigator after you left," she admitted. "Not to expose you, to make sure you were safe. I always knew something was wrong in your family, but Andrew would shut me down whenever I asked questions." She opened her designer handbag and removed a flash drive. Tax documents, bank statements, emails between Andrew and your father, discussing something called Project Lighthouse. It seems to be their biggest operation yet, some kind of real estate development scheme using laundered money. I accepted the drive, our fingers briefly touching across the table. "Why are you doing this, Sophia? You could take this to the authorities yourself." Her perfect composure cracked, revealing a glimpse of genuine fear. "They have something on me. Before I met Andrew, I was involved in some questionable activities. Nothing like what they're doing, but enough that your father made it clear I would go down with them if I ever stepped out of line. I need immunity, and I need a new life like the one you've built here." I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. Finding none, I made a decision. "I can help you, but you'll need to work with Richard Lowell and potentially testify when the time comes." Relief flooded her expression. "I'll do whatever it takes. I just want out." As our meeting concluded, Sophia hesitated. "There's one more thing you should know. Your parents have hired investigators to find you. They're becoming desperate as their schemes grow more complex. They need to know you won't expose them." This information accelerated my timeline. With Sophia's evidence added to my growing case file, Richard confirmed we were nearly ready to approach the authorities formally. But I needed one final piece of evidence, proof of my parents' direct involvement in Project Lighthouse. The opportunity presented itself unexpectedly when my mother reached out through my old email address, which I still monitored occasionally. "Darling, we miss you terribly," her message read, dripping with false sentiment. "Your father's 60th birthday is next month. The whole family will be gathering at the Vermont house. Please come home. We can put this unfortunate misunderstanding behind us." The Vermont house, purchased with my stolen inheritance, would be hosting all the key players in my parents' criminal enterprise. It was too perfect to ignore. "I'll be there," I replied after consulting with Richard. "I've had time to think, and family is what matters most." The response was immediate. "Wonderful. We knew you'd come to your senses." As I booked my flight to Vermont, I felt a strange mixture of dread and anticipation. For the first time in months, I would face my family not as the daughter they had betrayed, but as the architect of their downfall. I'm still blown away by how many of you have been following this journey with me. If you're just as shocked as I was about my parents' schemes, hit that like button. The truth is, returning to face my family was the hardest decision I've ever made. Have you ever had to confront someone who betrayed you? Let me know in the comments, because what happens next in this story might give you some courage if you're going through something similar. Stay with me, the confrontation is about to begin, and trust me, you don't want to miss what happens when justice finally catches up to my family. The Vermont countryside was ablaze with autumn colors as I drove the rental car up the winding road to my parents' vacation home. Each familiar landmark brought a complex wave of emotions: anger at what had been taken from me, satisfaction at how close I was to justice, and an unexpected pang of grief for the family I had once believed in. The house came into view, a sprawling, rustic mansion with custom stonework and floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the mountain views. My stomach clenched, knowing my inheritance had paid for this monument to my parents' greed. I parked beside luxury vehicles belonging to guests who had already arrived, checked my appearance in the rearview mirror, and stepped into character. For this weekend, I wasn't Liv Carter of Portland. I was Olivia Jensen again, hair perfectly styled designer outfit, carefully selected the prodigal daughter, returned with appropriate humility. The weight of the recording devices, Elliot had provided one disguised as a necklace, another as a stylish watch, felt heavy against my skin. My mother spotted me first as I entered, her practiced smile never reaching her eyes. "Olivia!" she exclaimed, rushing forward to embrace me. "You're finally home!" I returned her hug mechanically, breathing in her familiar Chanel perfume. Over her shoulder, I saw my father approaching, whiskey in hand, his face a mask of paternal forgiveness that made my blood boil. "Look who's decided to rejoin the family," he said, his tone jovial for the benefit of the guests mingling in the great room. He embraced me, whispering, "We'll talk privately later." Andrew stood by the fireplace, arm around Sophia, both wearing expressions of careful neutrality. Sophia gave me an imperceptible nod, confirmation that our plan was in motion. The next hours were an exercise in restraint as I navigated conversations with family, friends, and business associates, all while gathering intelligence. I noted which guests seemed most closely connected to my father's business dealings, cataloging names and relationships for later reference. The recording devices captured everything. Mr. Hargrove, I greeted one of my father's oldest clients, a developer known for questionable business practices. "Dad mentioned you're involved in Project Lighthouse. It sounds fascinating." Hargrove glanced toward my father nervously. "Thomas hasn't shared the details with you. I thought Olivia's been away," my father interrupted smoothly, appearing at my side. "She's not involved in the business aspects of our family." "Not yet," I said with a daughter's innocent smile. "But I'm interested in learning more." "Family, business, and all that?" My father's grip tightened on my arm. "Let's get you another drink, sweetheart." In the kitchen, away from guests, his facade dropped. "What are you playing at? You disappear for months, then come back asking questions about private business matters." I met his gaze steadily. "I thought you wanted me back in the family." "Isn't that what this weekend is about?" "Of course we want you back," my mother interjected, joining us. "But some things take time. Trust needs to be rebuilt." The irony of her mentioning trust was almost laughable. "You stole my inheritance," I stated flatly. $500,000 that Grandma left for me. "And you have the audacity to talk about trust." "We've been through this." My father sighed as if explaining to a child. "That money was invested for the family's benefit. Everything we've built, this house, our lifestyle, your brother's career, it all serves the Jensen legacy." "And what about my legacy?" I challenged. "Your legacy is being part of this family," my mother said coldly. "Something you chose to walk away from. We're offering you a second chance, Olivia. Don't squander it with childish accusations." The conversation was interrupted by dinner being announced. Throughout the meal, I played my role perfectly, the chastened daughter grateful for forgiveness, showing interest in family matters, even hinting that my design business was struggling without their support. After dinner, as guests gathered for drinks, my father invited select individuals to his study, Hargrove, 2 attorneys I recognized from his firm, and a man introduced only as our overseas consultant. Andrew joined them while Sophia and my mother entertained remaining guests. This was my opportunity. I had memorized the house layout from the architectural plans I'd helped develop and knew there was a concealed access point to the study through a storage closet in the adjacent guest bathroom. "I need to freshen up," I announced to no one in particular, slipping away from the gathering. Once in the bathroom, I locked the door, quickly entered the storage closet, and positioned myself where I could hear the conversation in the study through the thin wall. The recording devices captured everything as the men discussed Project Lighthouse in explicit detail, a development project using laundered money from my father's fraudulent accounting schemes, with property acquisitions facilitated by Andrew's legal maneuvering. "The offshore accounts are set up," the consultant was saying. "Once the federal grant money comes through, we'll route it through the shell companies, double our investment, and report only the legitimate income." "What about the environmental impact reports?" Hargrove asked. "The protected wetlands already handled," Andrew responded. I've got someone at the EPA who'll sign off on whatever we submit. And the local officials, one of the attorneys questioned. My father laughed. Let's just say their children's college funds are looking healthier this year. I had heard enough. Carefully, I made my way back to the party, my heart pounding with the knowledge that I now had everything needed to bring them down completely. The remainder of the evening passed in a blur as I maintained my performance. When guests finally departed and family members retired to their rooms, my father asked me to join him for a nightcap. In his study, the same room where I had overheard their criminal conspiracy hours earlier, he dropped all pretense. "Where have you been these past months, Olivia? Really?" "Rebuilding my life," I answered honestly, "learning to stand on my own." He studied me over his whiskey glass. "You've changed." "Had to," I replied. "When your family betrays you, it forces certain realizations." "We never betrayed you," he insisted. "Everything we did was for this family's benefit. You'll understand someday when you have children of your own." I thought of the recording devices still active on my person, capturing his every word. "So you admit you took my inheritance, that it wasn't just a misunderstanding," he waved dismissively. "That money was put to better use than you would have managed. Look at this house, the lifestyle you grew up with. Your grandmother would have wanted her money to strengthen the family, not be wasted on whatever artistic phase you were going through." "And Project Lighthouse," I ventured. "Is that also strengthening the family?" His expression hardened. "You've been eavesdropping." "I've been observing," I corrected. "It's what you taught me. Always pay attention to the details others miss." "Project Lighthouse is none of your concern," he said firmly. "If you want back into this family, you'll need to understand your place. Some questions aren't yours to ask." I nodded, appearing appropriately chastised. "I understand. I just want to come home." His expression softened slightly. "That's my girl. Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll discuss your future role in the family business." In my childhood bedroom, now converted to a guest room with no trace of my former life, I sent encrypted messages to Richard and Elliot, confirming the success of my mission. The recordings would be transmitted securely once I was away from the property. As I lay in bed, surrounded by the wealth built on stolen money and criminal operations, I felt no satisfaction. Yet only the calm certainty that by this time tomorrow, the perfect Jensen family facade would be shattered forever. Dawn broke over the Vermont mountains with picture-perfect serenity, nature's beauty contrasting sharply with the human corruption housed within these walls. I dressed carefully, selecting an outfit that projected the image of the daughter my parents wanted me to be: conservative, elegant, appropriate. Today's performance would be my most crucial yet. At breakfast, my mother was already directing staff for the small family gathering planned for my father's birthday lunch. She barely acknowledged me beyond a perfunctory greeting, too absorbed in ensuring the table settings met her exacting standards. "Sleep well?" Andrew asked as I poured coffee, his tone casual but eyes watchful. "Like a baby," I lied. "It's strange being back, but in a good way." Sophia entered, looking pale and tense, despite her flawless makeup. Only I recognized the signs of her anxiety, knowing what was about to unfold. "Beautiful day for a celebration," I commented, glancing out at the clear blue sky. If my family detected anything unusual in my demeanor, they gave no indication. They were too accustomed to controlling the narrative to imagine anyone else might be directing events. At precisely 1:30 a.m., as catering staff prepared for lunch, and my father enjoyed his traditional pre-celebration cigar on the terrace, the first signs of our plan materializing appeared vehicles approaching up the long driveway. Not the additional guests my parents were expecting, but unmarked government cars. "Are we expecting more people?" my mother asked, frowning, as she peered through the window. Thomas didn't mention. The doorbell rang. One of the staff moved to answer it, but my father, having noticed the vehicles from the terrace, rushed to intercept. "I'll get it," he announced, smoothing his cashmere sweater and assuming the confident posture that had intimidated countless individuals over the years. I positioned myself where I could witness everything while appearing merely curious. My phone was ready in my hand, a single text prepared to send at the crucial moment. My father opened the door to find federal agents from the IRS Criminal Investigation Division and the FBI, led by Richard Lowell himself, a theatrical touch I hadn't expected, but appreciated nonetheless. Thomas Jensen, the lead agent, asked, though it was clearly a formality, "We have a warrant to search these premises and all electronic devices within. We also have warrants for the arrest of yourself, Evelyn Jensen, and Andrew Jensen on charges of tax evasion, wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy." The color drained from my father's face as agents entered, fanning out through the house with practiced efficiency. "This is ridiculous," he sputtered, reaching for the authority that had always protected him. "Do you have any idea who I am? Who my connections are?" "We're well aware, Mr. Jensen," Richard replied calmly. "That's precisely why we're here." My mother's crystal wine glass shattered on the marble floor as she processed the scene unfolding in her perfect home. Thomas, her voice, carried a question he couldn't answer. Andrew moved quickly toward his briefcase, likely containing incriminating documents, only to find an agent already securing it as evidence. "Don't say anything," he instructed, our parents reverting to lawyer mode. "Not a word until our attorneys arrive." It was time. I sent the prepared text, and moments later, additional vehicles arrived, news vans from major networks and local stations. The anonymous tip they'd received about prominent financial figures being arrested at a luxury Vermont estate had been too intriguing to ignore. "What have you done?" My mother's horrified gaze found me across the room, understanding dawning in her eyes. "Olivia, what have you done?" I approached her calmly, speaking just loudly enough for nearby agents to hear. "I chose justice, Mother. I chose truth." "You ungrateful little—" She raised her hand as if to strike me, but an agent stepped between us. "Mrs. Jensen, please remain calm." My father lunged toward me, his face contorted with rage. "You betrayed your family. After everything we gave you, after everything you took from me," I corrected, maintaining my composure. My inheritance was just the beginning. "You stole my trust, my security, my belief in family. Consider this me collecting what I'm owed with interest." As agents led my parents and brother towards separate vehicles, reading them their rights, Sophia appeared at my side, trembling slightly. "It's done," I confirmed quietly. "Your immunity arrangement is in place. They'll want your statement now." She nodded, clutching her designer handbag like a lifeline. "I never thought it would really happen. That they could actually fall." "No one is untouchable," I replied, watching as my father, still protesting his innocence and threatening lawsuits, was placed in a government vehicle. No matter how powerful they seem, the catering staff stood frozen in shock, witnesses to the implosion of a family they had served for years. Outside news cameras captured the perp walk that would dominate the evening broadcasts. Respected community leaders in handcuffs, their carefully constructed reputation disintegrating in real time. Richard approached as the vehicles departed, satisfaction evident in his expression, despite his professional demeanor. "Your grandmother would be proud," he said. "She always said you had more integrity than the rest of them combined." "I wish I'd known her," I replied, feeling the weight of events beginning to settle on my shoulders. "She knew them for what they were," he continued. "That's why she tried to protect your inheritance with me as executor. She wanted you to have options they couldn't control." The irony wasn't lost on me. Her attempt to provide me independence had ultimately led to exactly that, though, through a path neither of us could have anticipated. As federal agents continued combing through the house, collecting evidence that would strengthen the already substantial case against my family, I stepped outside onto the terrace. The autumn air was crisp, the view of mountains breathtaking, a vista purchased with stolen funds that would likely be seized as proceedings moved forward. My phone buzzed with messages from my Portland circle, Megan, Elliot, Dakota, Vanessa, all monitoring news reports and offering support. For the first time, I allowed myself to fully feel what I had accomplished, not just personal vindication, but accountability for crimes that had harmed countless others beyond me. 1 year later, I stood in my Portland design studio, reviewing plans for a community center renovation that would provide affordable housing for families in transition. The irony wasn't lost on me using my design skills to create homes for those who had lost theirs when I had once lost my own place in my family home. The headlines had faded over time, but the impact of the Jensen family scandal continued to reverberate. My father had been sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for his role in multiple financial crimes. My mother received 8 years for her involvement in both the financial schemes and insurance fraud through her medical practice. Andrew, despite his attempts to negotiate a reduced sentence in exchange for information, was serving 6 years. The most unexpected outcome had been Sophia's transformation. After providing key testimony that helped secure the convictions, she had moved to Portland at my suggestion and was now running a nonprofit that helped women rebuild their lives after leaving abusive situations. Her first-hand understanding of coercion and control made her uniquely qualified for the work. Richard Lowell had successfully argued for restitution of my stolen inheritance, though the amount recovered was less than half of the original sum. Still, combined with the success of my design business, which had only grown as potential clients learned the real story behind Liv Carter's sudden appearance in Portland, I was more financially secure than I had ever been. More valuable than the money was the network of genuine relationships I had built in my new life. Megan remained my closest friend, while Elliot, Dakota, and Vanessa had become like the family I had always wished for, supportive, honest, accepting me for who I really was. I set down the blueprints and picked up the letter that had arrived that morning. The return address was from a federal women's prison in Connecticut. My mother had written periodically since her sentencing, each letter a mixture of self-pity and thinly veiled manipulation. This one, however, was different. "I've had time to think," she wrote, "about what we did to you, about the example we set. I won't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I want you to know that I understand now. The choices we made broke something that may never be repaired. I'm sorry, Olivia, truly sorry." Was it genuine remorse or another manipulation tactic? Perhaps it didn't matter. The apology wasn't what I had sought through all of this. Justice was. And justice had been served. My phone chimed with a notification from the U.S. Attorney's Office. The investigation sparked by my family's case had expanded to include 3 more financial firms engaged in similar schemes. The domino effect continued. Outside my studio window, Portland's perpetual rain had given way to unexpected sunshine. I decided to end work early and meet friends at our favorite local cafe. As I gathered my things, I caught sight of my reflection in the glass, no longer Olivia Jensen of Connecticut, not entirely Liv Carter of Portland, but someone new who incorporated elements of both. Someone stronger than either identity alone could have been. The inheritance my grandmother had intended for me had finally served its purpose, though not in the way she might have imagined. It had given me the most valuable asset of all, the truth about my family, and through that painful truth, the freedom to become myself. Thank you all for coming on this journey with me. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what's right? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story of family karma and justice resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life experiences and lessons learned the hard way. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that standing up for yourself isn't betrayal. It's sometimes the most powerful form of self-love. Until next time, remember that sometimes the family we choose is more valuable than the one we're born into.